I'm trying to coexist, exist. Yeah, I'm trying to coexist, exist. I'm trying to coexist.
November 2025, a dorm room in Providence, Rhode Island. A young man sits in total darkness. His phone is off, the blinds are drawn. He hasn't spoken a single word to another human being in weeks. On his desk, there are no manifestos about politics, no religious texts, no grand ideology. There's only a report card with a single letter grade, a C-. We have been trained to look for monsters with swastikas, or monsters with flags, or monsters with screams, which they can be easily identify. Almost like if a monster wants to put a mark on their head for everyone to recognize them. But the modern monster is silent, quiet, to himself or herself. He is created not by radicalization, but by stagnation, by not having the ability to evolve, to move, to adapt. He is a product of a culture that subsidized his comfort, took away his weapons, and made him feel unarmed until his soul atrophied, diminishes, vanishes, leaving a vacuum where a self should exist and should be comfortable with him or herself. And nature abhors a vacuum, the void. We get sucked into it, and many of us don't know how to escape the void of isolation, pain, suffering, and trauma. Welcome to the Ethics Guild podcast, where we explore human experiences. Today we are performing an autopsy of the identity vacuum. We're going to look at the neuroscience of why isolation turns into murder. Why 71% of shooters or mass shooters are socially isolated by choice, by fear, by not feeling part of a group, not finding a tribe where they can navigate and feel like themselves. And why a bare minimum culture is creating a generation of men who would rather be infamous than ignored. We're going to tap into why we don't believe in our own identity and why we create these personas and how we invest more in our shadow and persona than in our own identity. Where does the shame come and what does fear do to your mind? I will suggest you put down your phone, or if you're using a phone, pay close attention, because this conversation will require your full attention. Because you never know who you might be sitting next to. That person that you see that's quiet, that doesn't talk to anyone, that is different, that could be the next mass shooter. Let's start. First, we have to understand the anatomy of the void. What creates the void? What is the void? Of why we're seeing so many U.S. mass shooting in college and school campuses. Where do these insecurities come? And like I said before, we're going to be performing an autopsy so we can understand the complete behavior of how this transcended, how did it evolve, and what was the final outcome. Let's look first at the data. 52% of young adults live at home. That seems like a statistic of safety, right? Wrong. For many, it is a statistic of suspended animation. In words that we can understand, it's a way of creating safety through avoidance. And let's carefully understand the steps of how somebody that's so quiet, that doesn't seem to be taking part of the world and is not interested in the normal things people do, evolve into becoming a mass shooter. The first thing is we need to recognize that violence is never the first stop or the first step. It is the final stage of a long decaying process. It requires the bravery to commit the act through bonding all the traumas and all the emotions to one day just explode and implode. So let's analyze 4 steps. Isolation, the avoidance, the fact that these individuals don't want to take responsibilities. They're scared, they're afraid. And it normally starts with the digital safety, your phone, your tablet, your social media. This net replaces physical risk, real life experience, social bonds, teamwork environment, life experience. And then we go to anhedonia. The brain stops producing dopamine for normal activities. It stops you from making you feel joy, and this makes you stop feeling empathy. And after this comes the resentment. If you can't feel joy, you feel pressured, you feel guilt, you feel shame, you feel upset, you're mad at the world. And just because you don't take the responsibility, you start blaming everyone else except yourself. And you start with this resentment. You look at the world participating in life and you start hating them for it because you believe you don't fit in, you're incapable, you're different, and you can't find yourself. This destroys your identity, or not destroys their identity. This destroys the ability to believe in your own identity. And the final stage is the externalization, the manifesto. You accumulate so much resentment, anger, jealousy, and the pain is so great. So you decide to force the world to feel it, to feel your pain, taking it to radical, extreme decisions with a life-changing outcome. Some commit suicide. Others decide to shoot at the world so you can feel what they feel. And we have to analyze the neuroscience behind this. When a human being has no friction, no challenges, like for example, no job, no bills, no social rejection, the brain's default mode network goes haywire. It doesn't know what to do, gets confused. This is the part of the brain that tells you where you are, where do you exist, where your feet is standing on firm ground or not. Without friction, without challenges, the DMN starts eating itself. Implosion. Keep everything in. You stop believing in your identity. And it starts creating a feedback loop of paranoid rumination. Like, for example, you aren't living, you're not good enough, you don't belong here, others are better than you, the unhealthy comparisons, you're just buffering. These automatic negative thoughts are overwhelming. They take a toll of you. They kidnap you. They sabotage you, making you feel that you have no values. Your worth is nothing. We have to ask ourselves, for those that haven't suffered through depression, anxiety, any emotional disorders, because it's hard to understand this. If you never felt it, if you never lived it, if you haven't seen someone experience it. If I stripped away your digital persona, the person you are as an influencer, as a content creator, your Wi-Fi, and your parents' financial safety net today, would there be enough of a self in you left to survive the silence, the chaos? Will you be able to organize yourselves in the void and rebuild your confidence to believe in your identity? Or will you dissolve? Will you seek help from a professional to help you get through these moments? Because at the end, if you don't learn how to validate yourself, your true identity with your data and build yourself up, ask yourself this question as well, then who would and who is responsible? I want to go into more details about the shootings, and we're going to analyze some cases. And we're going to start with Nicholas Cruz. He is the patient zero of the identity vacuum. He didn't have an ideology. His criterion was confused. He had a void. And now we'll explain why. What was that void? Think about, like, in his mind, there was a ghost in that machine. His mother, Linda, died 3 months prior to the incidents of this mass shooting. His brother Zachary was a bully. He was the alpha in the group, and Nicholas considered himself the runt, the one beneath his brother. I want you to think about when you feel inferior in a place where you believe everyone else is superior than you. Sometimes it makes you feel like you don't belong there, like you're a deleted file and you want to run away. He ran away from his own life, feeling that he didn't exist. Imagine if you feel that way with your own family, people that you should trust and that should upbring you. And we have to understand the psychological shift. What was he trying to do to navigate out of feeling as a deleted file? He wanted to be restored. So what he did, he used his phone to rehearse a strong persona, to hide behind a mask, pretending to be something that he wasn't. He recorded videos saying, I'm going to be at the next school and become the next school shooter of 2018. Why? We should ask ourselves, why did he do this? Because in those videos, he was a god. He was powerful. Nobody could stop him. His ego elevated and he felt good about himself. Finally, he was alive. He wasn't a deleted file. But then when he went back out of his persona, he was a nobody. The Sneed family, who took him after his mother died, all they saw was a sad kid that just lost his mother. They couldn't see beyond that. They didn't know he was holding a gun to the head of his future every night in his dreams. This was his ultimate goal, and perhaps a sweet revenge to all the things that he couldn't achieve for himself. So I want to analyze step by step what happened so we can understand better the behavior. At 2:19 p.m., he takes an Uber to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. He doesn't drive himself, and there's a reason why. He becomes a passenger on his own life, or in his own life, until this moment. At 2:21, he enters Building 12. He heads to the stairwell to assemble his AR-15. What's funny is a student sees him, and what Cruz does, he warns him, "You better get out of here," he says. Things are going to get messy. And we can see this is his last moment of humanity, of compassion, and dignity for himself. If we analyze this from a psychological perspective, we can see that doing this had a God complex for him. He granted mercy, almost like the Roman empires did to the gladiators at the Colosseum. And then came the attack. He moves to the first floor. He doesn't enter classrooms. He fires through the windows and the doors. He is erasing people he can't even see or touch. Then he moves to the second and third floor. And he could have kept shooting, but after his rifle jammed, he drops it. He had enough. He cleverly blends in with the other students and flees, escapes. He walks like nothing has happened to a Walmart, buys a soda, and then just sits at the McDonald's, trying to enter or re-enter to the normal world that he has just destroyed. The event was a manifestation of his frustration and fear, of wanting to feel power and wanted people to understand his pain. What was the impact? 17 dead, 17 families who sent their child to school, and what they got back was a text message that their child wasn't coming back. The surviving students didn't just lose friends. They lost their inner peace. They lost their anonymity. They became the Parkland kids as we know them. They were forced to grow up on CNN. Question is, did we do right by exposing the surviving kids? It exposes the fact that we do not know how to handle these events from a psychological perspective, not only to prevent the shootings, but also how to deal with the aftermath of a shooting, especially with their kids involved. And I will leave you with these questions. I want to hear what your comments are. If the Snead family or his brothers or his brother had looked at his phone with all these videos talking about shooting other people, would 17 people be alive today? Would they have known what to do to stop and prevent this tragedy? Or was his isolation already a sealed tomb, a point of no return? Let me know what you think. And since these shootings, the archetype has mutated. We're seeing a shift from the loner to the perfectionist, the mimic, and the soldier. More like there's a sense of belonging or wannabe. And I want to walk through the last 5 cases so we can analyze this from a different perspective and understand how they are all connected with how we handle fear. And we're going to start with the mimic, somebody that imitates. Colt Gray from Winder, Georgia in 2024 is a good example of the mimic cry cycle. A 14-year-old boy raised in domestic chaos, from the common fights to the discussions, to the beatings, an environment of destruction, chaos, and very little organization. And to make matters worse, the father, Colin Gray, bought him a gun as a bonding tool. He ignored all the red flags from his son, the Discord messages, the obsession with school shooters prior to him, all because he wanted a son to be proud of. The question is, did Colin Gray put in all the work for his son to be at the standards of his expectation? The mother, Marcy, on the other hand, lived 200 miles away, and perhaps she felt it. She felt the distance. She felt that this disconnection brought the worst out of him, because on the morning of the shooting, she called the school counseling office, which is very interesting. It intrigues me. She was seeing the common threads and behaviors of the anomalies of her son. And she said, "Check on my son. It's an extreme emergency. If this is not a red flag, then I wouldn't know what is." And let's analyze what happened. At 9:30 a.m., Colt leaves his algebra class. He doesn't go to the bathroom to hide. He is well prepared. At 9:45 a.m., he returns to the classroom door. It's locked. A student goes to open it, sees the gun, and jumps back, frightened, doesn't know what to do and how to react. What will you do in that situation? And lucky for them, that locked door saved an entire room. Well, after that, he proceeded with the attack. He turns and fires at a neighboring classroom and the hallway. He kills 2 students. and 2 math teachers. At the end, he surrenders immediately. He avoided the firefight because all he wanted was a statement. He was never looking for a war just to be noticed. That was the statement. He lacked a father figure that showed him morals, ethics, values, responsibilities, and love, and also discipline. So where did he go? He became an apprentice under the ghosts of previous shooters. He found in them a mentor, a hero, and to him, being a shooter, being a monster, was better than being nothing, because that's how the shooters feel, like nothing. Let's analyze the second case, the perfectionists. And a lot of us fall victim into the perfectionist trap due to unhealthy comparisons that we create for ourselves, thinking that keeping up with the Jonases is a good example. It's a healthy challenge to have, not knowing that the Jonases are broke. The question is, would that fix you? Competing against something unknown. And the perfectionist has to do with the Brown University shooting that happened in Providence, Rhode Island in 2025, last year. This case shook academia. They couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it happened there and with one of their students, especially on a high achieving student. He had perfect GPA, no criminal record, someone you would give an honorary degree. Would you think seeing this student could become a monster, a mass shooter? Depression, anxiety, fear doesn't discriminate. His parents were lawnmower parents. They were always clearing all the obstacles for him since birth. So what they did is they didn't raise a son. They raised a resume, curriculum. And for them, his silence was just studying, that he was concentrated on the end goal of finishing a college career. But what did this do? What did this trigger in his mind? Now that everything was given to him and facilitated for him to be the perfect student, the question is, what happens when something doesn't go perfect and doesn't become as organized as you planned? Remember, we talk about the perfectionist trap. His entire identity was tied to academic validation. Think about the satisfaction he felt every time he maintained those A's, the reward of being recognized for those achievements. But we cannot sustain perfection. He got a C, and he didn't know how to handle. He didn't know how to confront failure and how to rebuild himself from it. What did he learn from failure? What was the lesson behind? And for him, C wasn't just only a grade. For him, it was an ego death. It was destruction of his character, something he considered he could never live with because his reputation was all about being perfect. So let's analyze step by step what happened on December 12th, 11 p.m. Finals week, places crowded, stressful faces, taking tests. He walks into the sciences library, almost like the citadel of his academic worth. That's where he spent most of his time. And the target, he goes to the professor who gave him the C. Then he enters the office. He doesn't scream. He is relaxed. He places his transcript on his desk, then shoots the teacher and his assistant. Then he sits in the professor's seat as a sign of empowerment, and then he takes his own life. He couldn't live in a world seen as someone average. That's what he thought of himself after getting that C. Average, not perfect, faulty. We have to be very careful when we pursue something. It is healthy to pursue things with the purpose of excellency, not perfection. Excellency gives you the room to fail, learn, get up, grow, repeat. Perfection, the rule of perfection is never fail. And we are designed to fail in order to learn. We have to ask ourselves, is our drive for excellence or perfection pursuit of growth? Or is it a shield you use to hide the fact that you don't know what is your real identity without your achievements? Tell me what you think about this question. Do you know who you are without the things that you have and the things you achieve? Now we're going to analyze the quiet quitter, the anhedonia fade. For those that don't know, he's the San Jose nightclub shooter that happened in San Jose, California, December 2025. His co-workers describe him at the tech company he worked on. They didn't even know his last name. That's how much they knew about him. His family hasn't seen him in 2 years. And this desolation marks you. You start questioning your value. You start questioning your worth. And you start thinking that you are unseen because of that, because you're unworthy. But how did he view the people in the nightclub during the shootings? He definitely didn't watch or see them as humans. He saw them as non-player characters who were having fun while he was miserable. Envy, jealousy is a killer. And what happened that night at 11:45 p.m.? He stands outside the Loft Club with this jealousy build up in himself, boiling, waiting to explode. He watches the line. He starts hating their laughter and their joy. So what he does, he walks to the smoking patio, but he doesn't engage. He stops. He fires 3 shots to the crowd, killing the bouncer who symbolizes the gatekeeper to that fun that made him miserable, or the fun he denied himself. But he thought that people were denying that to him. Then he drops the gun and waits. As you can see, he didn't want to escape. He wanted to be processed. He wanted the attention, seeking attention, because this would at least have the system acknowledge his existence. Finally, he is recognized. Finally, people see who he is. They know his name. They know his last name. They know who he is. We have to understand the importance of the feeling of belonging, the feeling of socializing, the feeling of being loved, the feeling of having friends, living, experiencing. We have to ask ourselves, when we stop participating in the friction of human experiences, what is it that you see? Do you stop seeing people as people? Do you allow your depression to create the envy and joy that denies you happiness and moments of joy? What do you do when you're depressed? Who do you talk to? Who do you go to? Do you seek help? Or do you allow the emotion itself to make you feel that nobody wants you and that you are unworthy? I strongly suggest that although depression is something that curbs you in like a ball and doesn't let you out of the hole, regardless of how you feel, isolation is not a solution. Regardless of how you feel, look for friends, look for family, look to talk to someone. Even if you're not feeling it, just the fact that you're doing something to not be there is always a good step. Think about it as this way. Somebody puts you in a hole. Imagine if 3 days passes by and you're hungry and you make the decision that you're not going to put any effort to move out of the hole. But suddenly you see an arm. Should that arm give you hope to scale, to climb up? But in order to reach that hand or that arm, you have to put in the effort to at least move out of the hole or the bottom part of it, so you can reach out to the exit. And then we have the soldier from Orrin, Utah in September 2025. I call him the failure to launch turned warrior. And let's think about it. He was unemployed, living at home. He had no real problems, no real challenges, no purpose. So he adopted other people's problem online. The curiosity that led him to his own self-destruction. And his surname there was Vicarious Grievance. He joined extremist forums that discuss radical topics. And he did this not because he believed in politics, but because he needed a war to fight, because that's all he knew. So what happens after he's looking and he's debating and he's having heated conversations online with people he doesn't know? And this anger keeps building up and he doesn't have anyone where to deposit all this anger. He doesn't know how to navigate through his emotions, feeling disoriented. On September 15 at 2 p.m., he drives to City Hall wearing full tactical gear from Amazon that he bought. He feels like a soldier. He feels like the person online feels brave. But although he feels this way, he looks like a lost child. He breaches the lobby and demands to see a representative. When the security guard steps forward, Tyler fires. He is tackled by the civilians that were there before he can reload. Thank God, because he wanted more blood. He needed it. But yet, in court, he looked confused. If you look at the videos of him in court, he looks very confused. Almost like he was waiting for like a respawn, reset button. That's how he looked. I dare you to watch these images of him in the courtroom. It's clear that he was disassociated with himself. And this happens when we also face emotional disorders, when we have PTSD, when we have fear, when fear overtakes our mind. We start feeling disconnected with ourselves. It's almost like we're outside of ourselves, but you can't feel anything inside. There's a numbness to it. This is what Tyler was facing and feeling, but they didn't tell anyone. They didn't seek for help. This is why he created the warrior persona, the one that debated, the one that was strong enough to debate about any political issues, but all he was doing is feeding his shadow with all that anger. And I ask this to those that feel stagnant in their life. Are you fighting for a cause, or are you just using a mission to distract yourself from who you really are and the things you must do to give yourself purpose? A man without a purpose dies quickly. And now we have the last person we're going to talk about from the mass shooting incidents. I'm going to talk about the isolated veteran, Michael Paul Brown from Anaconda, Montana. And this also happened in 2025 in August. This all happened in the same year, one copycatting another. And this has to do a lot with untreated trauma. I'm a veteran myself, and I know what it is to have PTSD and live with it every day. It's constant suffering. It's trying to control all these emotions that attack you from different ways, in different forms. And in the process, you're trying to do all the things that other people do in their normal life, like pursuing a career, learning in academia, being a father, being a mother. It is hard to live with PTSD. But if one thing PTSD teaches you, it's how to be brave and how to humble yourself to grow. But unfortunately, Michael Paul Brown perhaps didn't get the proper help, the counseling, the therapy, the friend, the family love that he needed. His psychology, if we analyze it, was all about the paranoia or the paranoid externalization. His PTSD warped his isolation into a defensive war against the neighbors. He had the need to force the physical world to match the war zone inside of his own head. The chaos inside his head had to match his real life, to put it in better words. As you can see, there's a lack of adaptation here. Think about living in a constant battle in your head, not knowing how to silence or slowly control the triggers that come from it. What would this do to any one of us? How could we navigate with all that's in us and everything we think is complete chaos, and all we know how to do is to be defensive about it? I'll leave you with this question. If your mind was a war zone, would you seek peace, or will you look for another reason to shoot back because that's all you know and you don't know how to cope with your inner self? You haven't adapted to the fact that you're no longer the past and have therapy to live in the present. Cognitive dissonance, exposure therapy. If you see someone like this, will you able to recognize these behaviors and send help? We're not prepared to know what to do when we see someone with PTSD. We typically judge, and it's easier to judge than to help someone. And this brings me to the topic of the systematic failure and education. Plays a huge part on how we can prevent mass shooting in the United States or in the world. We have to accept the fact that we do have some responsibility. We cannot blame this solely on the shooters, as we normally do. How it's publicized on our channels, news, and people that perhaps don't understand how to solve this problem. But to start, is we need to educate ourselves on understanding the ecosystem these individuals grow in. And I'll give you a good perspective. I'm originally from the Bronx, and most of the people in the Bronx don't shoot for academia. And it's not because that's the choice they want to make. It's just that the example they actually got from home. That's the environment sometimes plays a huge role, because that's what you let yourself compare yourself to what you should be, because you don't see and you don't know any better. And this is where parenting is so important, especially at early age development. What are you exposing your kids to, if you have any? And we have to be honest, we have created a digital safety net. We subsidize stagnation, especially when you allow a 25-year-old man live in a room with no rent. What are you teaching your child? Are you really loving them? How can you love without the discipline? How can you love without giving them all the tools necessary to become resilient, to overcome challenges, to become solution-oriented, to be good to themselves, and to build dignity for themselves? We do this from a early age, trying to give everything to our kids, thinking that that is the answer. We all need to be challenged. If not, we fall into stagnation and comfort, and we always want to stay there because that's all we know. Think about what the no responsibility does. And especially today with unlimited high-speed internet, you're really not helping young adults. You're rotting them. You're not teaching them how to fly from their nest so they can create their own. You're giving them a way to digging themselves in a hole. You are denying them the struggle, the suffering that builds ourselves and our identity. This is why when we don't discipline and we don't love, we create stagnation that could possibly create these mass shootings. And this is also a message to the schools. In school, it's all about compliance. It's not about solution orientation, critical thinking, imagination, creativity. We don't teach competency. We want everyone to be a winner. But as we all know, when you become an adult, not everyone wins. And there's different degrees of winning, depending on the work and how you prepare yourself. We are so focused on our school system of safetyism. Everyone has to be safe. How will you ever evolve if all you feel safe in only one place and one place only? According to the schools, we're protecting the kids from their feelings rather than creating resilience. What are we doing to our kids from a psychological perspective? How can they get psychological education if they are unable to explore the challenges of joy and suffering? We're seeing kids not being okay from starting from zero. We're starting to see kids that don't know what to do when they are bored and they feel entitled to always be entertained. And this is because we also have developed a strong phone addiction. We have removed the concept of redemption through work. We want the prize before putting the hard work. We want to win and not have the sour taste of failure. We want to grow without the sacrifice. Think about this. We have failed to teach dopamine management. Today is all about immediate gratification. And what does that do? It creates a homeostasis in your brain, making you addictive and expecting rewards with minimal effort. We do not teach them that boredom is not an enemy. It's a way of finding yourself and asking yourself philosophical questions, critical thinking, purpose, understanding, reflection. Boredom is a gateway to thought and to philosophize. We have let algorithms raise a generation of addicts, of people that cannot live with the tool because the tool manages them. Are we creating? Well, let me rephrase this question. What kind of leaders are we creating in the United States? And the question here is, how do we stop the bleeding? How can we start a great psychological program that prevents in the future these issues that we're facing today? That we ask ourselves, why did this happen? But the evidence is there. It happens because we have not prepared ourselves to prevent them from happening. We have to first rebuild friction. We need to transition from passive consumption to active contribution. There's a big difference. When you contribute to something you feel part of, when you consume, everything is given to you. We must build things, and it's better if we do it with one another. We must lift things so we can feel that carrying something brings its level of effort, but also pain, but also at the end of reward. And we must be okay with facing rejection. Not everyone has to say yes. It's okay to get the no's and rebuild yourself knowing that there was something you were missing when you face rejection. And how will we do that? We need exposure therapy. Lots of exposure therapy. And exposure therapy, you don't get it just by sitting in a psychologist's office. Therapists, we need to be more active about this. Because if somebody comes in seeking help and they are afraid of the world, and now the office and the therapist becomes the safe network, how is that going to help them? How is that going to serve them in the outside world? Talking alone is not enough. There needs to be a human factor that guides them, mentors them, educates them as they're receiving therapy. We need to nurture all that we know, plus teach with examples how to create healthy boundaries, how to start investing in their identity more than their mask that they're wearing. What does self-love looks like? And how do you become disciplined, responsible for yourself, for your own outcomes? And the number one thing is fear. Fear should be used as a compass, not as something you need to always be running away from. We don't educate anyone on how to manage through fear. what to do when you get to that point where you're getting an anxiety attack. We have failed. And one of the things that social media has destroyed a lot of people, great individuals, is being okay with being average. You don't have to be the star. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. It's okay to be average. If average means that you have peace of mind, that's the reward. Stop comparing yourself to others, especially in social media. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know the behind the curtains. They're just showing you what they want to show you. A mask, as Carl Jung calls it. That's all that you're seeing behind a screen, especially those that compare themselves, feeling entitled to live a lavish life and yet haven't worked or studied to get there. My message is it's okay to be average. But more importantly, if you are average, make sure that you are active, because this is going to make you feel great about yourself, that you tried, that you never gave up. And look what happened at Brown University, that perfectionist trap. It makes you think that you must be a god, perfect, or if not, you are nothing. And that's what we're teaching our kids. And that's what phone addiction is doing. What are you doing to overcome these challenges? How are you challenging your kids to not be stagnant and to fall victim into depression, anxiety, and other emotional disorders? What I'm trying to say is that we are facing a crisis of meaning, a crisis of purpose, a crisis of identity. See what's happening in today's world with the ICE raids. If that doesn't demonstrate that we have a lack of identity because we're targeting even those that legitimately are U.S. citizens, shouldn't federal agents be protecting us? But this is all because we do not know how to manage fear, and we make radical decisions without analyzing all the possible consequences. And the American dream is dead for the lazy. You can't have an American dream and be lazy at the same time. You got to work 2, 3, 4 times harder than anyone else, because you have to outcompete those that are competing for the dream you're trying to reach, because they also have a dream. The question is, how hard are you working for that American dream? The American dream is only alive for the builders, for the one that takes risks, for the ones that after failing, they get back up and they repurpose themselves. The ones that are okay with not being perfect. The ones that are okay with being vulnerable. The ones that will take whatever it takes to be active and keep going forward. If we really want to stop violence, if we really want crime to go down, if we want to see better leaders making better decisions at the White House, at your local council hall, we must stop the stagnation crisis. We must stop those that we love, that we see they're being lazy. Anxiety and depression hates a busy mind. And if you're stagnant, you're a victim of these two things. Easily kidnapped by them and put in their cells for the endless cycle of pain and suffering. We must invite our young men back into the tribe of knowing that sacrifice, hard work, dedication, discipline, organization is the key, not for a perfect life, but for peace of mind. Be happy with the little that you have, or the much that you have. Be happy with anything and everything that happens to you. Because the question you should ask yourself is, what is it that you learned? That you become more wise? And what is that wisdom going to do for you and those that you love? Because now you're able to protect those with that wisdom. We got to stop inviting our young men like they're just a guest that just come in and then, something you're not worthy. No, stay with them. Be patient. Build them up. Building up means that you're mentoring all the way. When they go down, you go down with them. You meet them where they are and have them earn their place as you're mentoring. A life without consequences. And consequences are good and bad. A life without that. Think about how would that affect your morals and your ethics and your values if there was never a consequence of what your actions do. And I want to leave you with a question that I hope you leave a comment. If you died today, would your life be about what you built or what you consumed? I leave you with that. Don't forget to subscribe to the Ethics Guild podcast. And it's time to wake up. America, we can do it. Until next time. Bye. Welcome back again, Ethics Guild Podcast, where we explore human experiences. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do not forget our campaign. We are committed to transform your subscriptions into pro bono programs for mental health. So you can free somebody's mind from their traumas and help them heal just by subscribing. Very simple, and it costs absolutely nothing. Help us through this campaign, and we just want to pay forward, not only to our viewers, but for those that can't afford mental health services. Just remember, the statistics are real. Only 4 out of 10 Americans can afford mental health services. So help us change that. Hopefully, we can move the statistics and perhaps move it from 4 to 5 out of 10 people have good mental health services.
Let's start.
To the success of the Unity Brunch, may we continue moving forward together. Cheers!